Thank you, Minister, and for those from the Department and the Minister's office that are here now, and anyone listening, I would then implore you to please, when looking at functional assessments, look at using tests that are already widely used by a lot of these diagnosticians, so that if, for example, the psychologist uses a Vineland or a Griffiths or whatever the tests are, that they form part of a functional assessment, because you may actually be ticking two boxes by using the one assessment tool, rather than creating some new bespoke product, which I just promise you right now, take my word for it, any bespoke test will be a complete disaster because it will be some vested interest pushing a particular part of an assessment and providers having to learn a whole new tool versus tools that they already use and apply regularly and are very consistent across the board. And this may be apparent, but I just want to get some clarity. One of the things with the scheme, and I think we've lost that purpose, is that it was designed for permanent and lifelong disability. We have seen conditions added, particularly in the early childhood stream, but we have other conditions that are now part of the NDIS that are not permanent nor lifelong, that are being pushed in, and that's in part because the states have vacated the field. The NDIS is the only lifeboat in the ocean quite often. But what I'm concerned about is, or want clarified, functional assessments can show if there's developmental delays, it can show if there's an inability to perform certain tasks. Some of those inabilities aren't necessarily due to a lifelong and permanent disability. For those parents out there, and especially for some of the mums I know that absolutely loathe going to mothers' groups and play groups at the park, it's an overwhelming thing to hear about how all these women's children are gifted. Everyone's child is gifted. They're all so special. And when you've got a kid with special needs, it's a particularly galling place to be when you're hearing about everyone's gifted children. And there is barely a parent out there who can openly admit, you know what, they're a great kid, but they're just not the sharpest tool in the shed. And, you know, there's a great spectrum of people in the world, and some are really good at some things, some are really good at others. Not everyone's a natural-born genius. You wouldn't know that at mothers' groups, but in reality, not every child is a genius. And I guess one of my concerns is that you end up with a functional assessment that's not... Is it going to be linked to a diagnosis? Is there still going to be a list of diagnoses that cover the NDI, that the NDIS covers, or is it going to be more based on a skill set you've got or don't have, or what you can do versus what you can't do, so that we're not sort of opening the door up again to people who can pay for lots of expensive reports but not necessarily have a permanent and lifelong disability?